Welcome. You are listening to an interview with Professor Jan Klabbers, SNIS Scientific Committee member and eminent law professor specialized in the law of treaties. Jan likes to listen to Bruce Springsteen, who is known for being a very direct person. So I'll start also with a very direct question. Jan, you have a very high reputation as an interdisciplinary academic in the realm of international law. So it's fairly obvious for the SNIS to want you on its scientific committee for evaluating projects. So the real question is, why did you accept the invitation to be part of such a committee? Did you know about the SNIS before receiving the invite?
I was not aware of its existence, but of course I could have been, because in pretty much every country there is an organization like this or similar. I got an email at some point from Bernard asking me if I would be interested and could he call me. So Bernard called, we had a nice chat, and I'm generally interested in doing this sort of thing because I can learn a lot. I think I also have something to offer, but I can also learn a lot, and I have learned a lot at SNIS over the last couple of years. I've also done this with the European Research Council, which has a slightly different format. The panel is a bit bigger and the composition changes a bit quicker. And it's nice to visit Geneva twice a year.
I'd like to ask you to tell us a little bit about your academic itinerary, about any formative moments you remember that you would like to share.
I'm of the generation where before email, so before word processing, so I still have very vivid memories in terms of itinerary of writing my first article on a typewriter and then getting comments from the peers and you have to start all over again. That's maybe not terribly exciting. One of my, I think, formative moments came in the mid-'80s when I was writing that first article together with a fellow student. We were undergrad still at the time. And the leading international trade law professor happened to be in Amsterdam for a PhD defense. So we asked for an audience, we got an audience, we ended up talking, sitting on the stairs in front of the examination building in the sunshine with Professor John H. Jackson, who was like the Pope. Yeah, that was the name, still is one of the big names. He passed away a few years ago, but that was such nice moment because you expect your own professors to be nice, but that here you have a global star who takes time and chats and it's perfectly friendly and accessible and open. That was wow. I want to be like that when I grow up. That was the sentiment. That was in the mid-'80s, I think 84 or 85, 85 probably. And another formative moment in a more negative way, if you will, is that maybe 20 years, 25 years ago, I had a very long improvised conversation with a legal theory professor who tried to tell me, and he did it very well, about the differences in the translations of the first and second edition of Hans Kelsen's Pure Theory of Law. I was completely overwhelmed, completely in awe. Wow, someone wants to do that. And also completely convinced that's not what I want to do. That I want to do different things. I want to have something to do with what goes on in the world. And I think that has been, in retrospect, a very formative experience. And that means I have become, probably always was, but I've become a very eclectic scholar. I use theories when I think they are useful for the particular question I have. I use methodologies left and center. I'm like a magpie, you might say, a little bird who steals the silverware. I steal methods and theories whenever I can and whenever I think they're useful. And I also don't use them when I don't think they're useful. So it's a very eclectic approach. Not everyone likes that. People want to have some pigeonholing, and they find me difficult to pigeonhole usually. But so be it, not my problem. Right.
Given this quite impressive academic experience, what is your take on what is required of research nowadays? What has changed? What is better? What is not so good?
What we ask is too much in terms of publications, in terms of research proposal these days is not complete if it doesn't promise at least one paradigm shift, which is complete and utter nonsense, should never be expected. Like the last paradigm shift in the social sciences was probably with Nietzsche. That's some time ago. I don't think that should be expected. What you should expect is basic competence, basic interest in the world around us, not trying to say that Foucault was right and therefore this and this is wrong with the world, or Derrida was right and therefore this and this was wrong with the world, or Milton Friedman was right and therefore this and this is wrong with the world. That does not get my juices going. But I see too much of that. I think that's partly driven by the academic industry that the SNIS is also part of, which is an additional motivation perhaps to be on panels like this, to help a little bit projects that might not otherwise, that I think would be good, that might otherwise get snowed under in the drive towards big social science, big data, big numbers, big everything. I would like to see with the SNIS more people applying with humanities projects. I think most of the proposals we get, very standard social science work, where there's a lot of empirical work, a lot of interviews, a lot of field work. Sometimes that's wonderful, sometimes it's excellent, sometimes it's a bit less well developed. But what we don't really get is philosophers or historians or lawyers to apply for funding for international projects. So the Swiss Network for International Studies has become a little bit the Swiss Network for International Social Sciences. And maybe that's an inevitable development, but I would like to see more of the humanities stuff, because I think that historians can do pretty good international studies and philosophers writing on global justice. Having said that, there's nothing wrong with good work in that tradition, and the more the better.
Well, after you told us all this, what then is a good project for you? If you see a submission to the SNIS, what makes you click with it?
I would think a project is a good project if it ends up telling me something about the world I live in. That does not exclude delving into theories and seeing whether someone was right or wrong. That does not exclude using particular methods to show how well they are adapted to the problem at hand. But if it stays at that, then it doesn't tell me much about the world I live in and what I want to know, really. So that would, for me, be a good project if it tells me something about the world around me, around us. And that can be in any particular tradition. It can be a very rationalist type of thing, a very quantitative type of thing. It can be a very qualitative humanities type of thing. Anything.
Are there any passions that inform your academic path, some hidden talents?
I think I am one of those lucky people who managed to turn a deep interest into a profession. Okay, if you really want to get personal, I like to sing for what it's worth. And I think that has been very good for developing a voice that has a certain reach in the classroom. That has little to do with research activities, but the other part of the academic is to teach, still, hopefully, to a greater or lesser extent. And there, to have some control over your voice comes in handy. And I think that has come from doing extracurricular stuff.
I have really come to the conclusion that most researchers have a hidden or not so hidden creative streak.
No, you cannot do this without having a creative streak. Then you're just a bureaucrat in the wrong profession. You need to, and that's nice. That's a lot nastier towards bureaucrats than I mean it. No, I think there is an element of creativity, a creative moment in devising a research project, in writing it down. You can sometimes recognize people by their writing style, which also has a creative twist to it, of course. Yeah, I'm fully on board with that.
Ian, thank you very much for this interview, for the generosity with which you've answered my questions. And I wish you all the very best for the future. And let us have Bruce Springsteen, the boss, bring this podcast to a close.